I don't really know what to do with an opening for this thing because I'm not good at intros and that sort of stuff. But as you can probably tell from what you've seen up here or down here, wherever the description is in the video, I mean, you already know, you clicked on it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about like trading in games and just why I don't do it anymore. Uh, I've been rebuilding and expanding my collection for years. Um, I'll get into it later into the video, but when I was younger, that's what I did all the time. Is I traded in all my games for whatever I could get, games, consoles, everything like that. I've owned a Super Nintendo twice. I've owned a PlayStation 3 twice. Um, 8-bit Nintendo I've owned 3 times. Sega Genesis 3 times. Because I kind of got into this cycle of having my games, playing them for a while, and then when I kind of got bored with them or whatever, I would just trade them in because, that's kind of what you do. You just trade your games in whenever you're done with them. But I found, at least for myself personally, it wound up being a problem because I would trade my games in, stuff like that, and it would be fine for a couple months, a couple years. But inevitably, I found myself wanting the thing back again. And I would end up wasting a lot of my time and eventually money too by trading in and buying back and trading in and buying back based off of my own wants and needs and stuff like that. And I eventually realized that I should just hold on to it anyways because you're not going to get much of anything for trading stuff in the long run, especially if you're going to trade stuff in and then get it back later, depending on what it is, when it is, how it is, what you even had in the first place. So let's get into it. I don't know how to transition to things, so this is your transition, and yeah, here you go. Long, long ago, I was a young lad who loved my video games, but now I'm a much older lad who still loves his video games, but actually has the money to go buy his own video games. I remember the days when I would walk into Gamestop and peruse their collection of games, new and old, and feverishly anticipate the newest releases and covet those which I couldn't yet get. However, as a kid, like most, I didn't have my own job. No income outside of birthdays and Christmases to get those games. So I had to rely on the act of trading in games that I owned for credit towards the purchase of a new game. So if I wanted anything new, I had to pony up my cartridges and sacrifice them to the EB Games gods in hopes that my offerings appeased them enough to persuade them to let me leave with the newest Zelda or Mario or whatever I was after on that trip. This led to an unsustainable problem, however, as I would often trade in 4 or 5 games for various consoles to get just one, of the latest and greatest game for whatever console I felt like playing. You see, companies like the Exchange and GameStop thrive off of trades. You pay them $60 for a brand new game on launch day, you have your fun with it, and then you're encouraged to bring it back to them, to trade it in for a fraction of the retail cost. Sometimes only $30, $20, even less more often than not. It wasn't until my early 20s that I realized just exactly what it was that I was giving up. See, I fell into this trap of assigning a monetary value to my games and working out how much they were actually worth, be it financially, the amount of time spent playing said game, and over time, a trend in gaming emerged: the analysis of the, quote, cost of a game. Back in the day, most games had a single-player story, maybe a multiplayer mode tacked on for afterwards, but after that, you're essentially done. You played it, you beat it, you move along, or better yet, trade in your old games at GameStop! So people began to shy away from games with a 10-hour campaign story mode because they say, oh, that's it? It's like paying $6 an hour. I'm sorry, but that is just absolutely ridiculous that you can quantify fun. I mean, you're making the act of playing a game not fun by saying, like, breaking it down as to how much it actually costs you to play the game and how much you're squeezing and wringing out of it. It's no better than some of these video game companies out there who are trying to wring out every single dollar they can from something. I understand we're paying our own money to get these games, but at the same time, come on, we can't be analyzing every single tiny thing that we do like this.
I will never for the life of me understand this line of reasoning. And here's why. Do you have a favorite movie? I mean, of course you do. Everybody's got their own favorite movie. I got a bunch of them, but Tron Legacy is the one that springs to mind first. Jeff Bridges, Daft Punk soundtrack, beautiful visuals. If you haven't seen it, do it. And I'm talking like right now, seriously. I understand it's a sequel of an ancient movie and nobody really needed the sequel, but hey, that's its own thing on the side. Anyways, I saw it in theaters opening day. I paid about $10 for the ticket, something like that. Loved it. Thought it was great. Bought it when it came out on DVD, $10 or so, something like that. And I watched it. I'd watched it and watched it and watched it. And you know how many countless times I've seen Jeff Bridges' beautiful, beautiful face and his not so beautiful digitally de-aged face on the grid? Off the top of my head, at least 6 or more. And that's just off the top of my head. This movie came out in like 2012, something like that. So it's like 8 years. Anyways, the point. You see, the story is the same every single time I watch that movie. Never changes. Nothing new. Not now, not ever, never will be. The movie's done. That's it. It's filmed. And that's what you get on the disc. That's totally okay. Because I like the story. I like the visuals. I like the actors. I love the characters. It is a great way to waste 2 hours and 7 minutes on any given day. Now, I know games out there are anywhere from 10 hours, 30 hours, 60 hours, or more for a single-player experience. A far cry from a 2-hour movie. So, I mean, it's not exactly apples to apples, you know. There is a little bit of a difference there, and I do understand that. But the logic still applies. Who is anyone to tell me that my experience with something good or bad is worth? Why do I have to enjoy something only once and then never touch it again? Especially given the rise in newer features like New Game Plus and DLC, why do I have to stop playing a game and trade it in just after I beat it once? Why can I just not? Why do I have to do this? Why is this the status quo? Why can I not just play the same game over and over again? I mean, hell, Undertale I beat 4 times in a row before I finally took a break from it. Granted, it's about a 3-hour experience each time, but that game offers enough for you to play through multiple times. But it's still pretty much the same linear story through and through with a couple changes here and there. But even when considering older games that don't get DLC, that don't get patches, anything like that, that are just that on its own. There are games that I once owned as a kid that I traded in only to regret it as an adult and have to go seek them out once again. Be it through online auctions or scouring through the nearest exchange store or other secondhand store that may or may not have what I'm looking for, trying to beat out other people for the same thing that we all really want is that old experience. And unfortunately, sometimes you don't really know the true value of something until it's totally gone. So take something like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo. One of the definitive SNES games, so revered that is still praised to this day, and even referenced in game design still, included on the SNES Classic Edition and the Nintendo Switch Online SNES collection. I got it for $30, something along those lines, used at the time when I was maybe 10 or so about 20 years ago at this point. That was buying it used at Gamestop when it was a new-ish game. Now, GameStop is going to give you a whole $6 for it if you walk in there, cart in hand, and throw it down on the counter. But at the same time, they're going to take that and turn around and sell it for $25 online used. So they can make a pretty much $18-ish or so, $18, $19 off of you on that. So you're willing to trade your time in with a revered classic like that for $6 whole for a large company to turn around and make money off of you and your experience? And that's not even considering the people who traded in for $6 their cart and then someday want to turn around and buy that cart back. At that point, that's even more ridiculous. They give you a whole $6, but you're going to turn around a year plus later and buy it back for $25 if you don't have access to it any other way. Just doesn't make sense to me. Something like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, one of the most popular third-party games for the Super Nintendo. Of, I would say, arguably all time. It's another one that's hard to come across now, but there were kids who had it back in the day. They are going to give you a whole $9 to trade in your copy of Zombies Ate My Neighbors. So this company can turn around and sell it for a whole $35 for them. I mean, honestly, side note, if you're going to sell your games anyways, far be it from me to stop you, but don't go to GameStop. Come on, guys. Like, it's going to a corporation that's going to jack the price up. There's somebody out there on eBay that'll appreciate getting it from a fellow gamer more so than a faceless corporation who's only in it for the money, let's be real. And then there's something like Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is probably one of, again, the rarest and one of the more popular Super Nintendo games out there. Back when Square Enix was still called Squaresoft. But this game has been ported and re-released so many times across so many generations on so many consoles and platforms, mobile, PC, handhelds, that GameStop only will give you 1 cent, 1 single cent to trade in your hard copy, your cartridge of Chrono Trigger, one of the rarest games for the Super Nintendo out there. And if you want to buy it from them, they're not just going to charge you $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80. GameStop wants $110 for that. So a company sees the monetary value of it, and of course they know its worth just by the fact that they've assigned it such a ludicrous, ridiculous price to buy it off them. But honestly, that's really not that far-fetched, because that's kind of what the going rate is for a copy of that game. I mean, these are just a few examples. There's many more like them, but these are just 3 of them that I picked off the top of my head. These are games that I had when I was younger. These are games that I would still have today if I didn't just take all of them that I could to trade them in for a game that I would have spent money on anyways. See, these games, they were my childhood. And even to this day, there are games that I own that I've only played once, maybe twice. But there are some that I've also played through multiple times. In fact, I do almost a yearly playthrough of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. I have for over 20 years. There's some games where I just kind of feel the need to go back to them randomly, even though they have nothing new for me. They have a spot in, like, my heart, not to sound like a giant meatball of mush, but they really do. They hold a special place in my heart, and that my time with them is worth more than a whole $5, $6 that I could get from some company that I could put towards something else one way or another. Even if I only spent a couple hours with a game. You never know. There's some games that I own that I've only played maybe 3 hours of. One of them, namely Elder Scrolls Online, and I'll go on record, I have in the past, saying I hate MMOs and live service games. But I still have that copy of Elder Scrolls Online for the Xbox One. It was my first Xbox One game that I'd purchased. And I played maybe 3-4 hours of it and put it down. It was nowhere near anything remotely close to what I was expecting it was going to be, honestly, truly and honestly. And chances are I might not ever play it again. But it's still my game. It's a part of my collection. There's something to be said about seeing all of those cases on a shelf, and all of those cartridges, and all of those boxes. I've said before on this channel that I've got hundreds of games, be it physical, digital, any of the like. I prefer those physical copies. I want to keep those physical copies because it's a collection for me. It's a badge for me. I'd say, hey, look at my games. Look at what I've played. Look at what I've done. The places I've seen, the places I've been to, things that I've accomplished. While they may not mean anything that can translate into money, I think that there's something to be said for what these games do to shape us and our identity as a gamer, and dare I say it, even a person in some regards. And all these games that I have, they're great, and they're mine. And no amount of money is going to separate me from them. Even the bad ones are great, because they're all games, good or bad. They're there for entertainment. And even if you don't like them, in the end, it's still time that you spent with them. It's still entertainment. They all come with a story, be it the actual story that's written on the disc or cartridge or whatever, or your own personal story with them. How you beat it, when you played it, why you played it, what you liked and what you didn't. Who am I to assign games a value? And what am I truly giving up when I trade in a game? Are all my fond memories of my time with a game worth only a few dollars towards the newest, latest, and greatest game? when I was gonna buy it one way or another. But I want to trade in my time and my fun and my memories with a game, be it good or bad, to shave a couple bucks off of that total. And who says just because I didn't like something now that my taste won't change in the future? I mean, it's happened to me in the past. I used to love racing games. I can't stand them now. Outside of F-Zero, we want a new F-Zero game. Or that I won't want to share my collection with my kids one day, or family, or friends. I mean, I'm always trying to get my wife to try something that I have in my collection. Games that I've only played once. Final Fantasy X, for example. She's slowly coming around to the idea of an RPG that's turn-based. I've only played Final Fantasy X and X-2 once, but that's not to say that there's nothing left for me there. Granted, I may not want to take time away from something else that I'm playing to go through and play Final Fantasy X or X-2 again. But that doesn't mean that I can't have a new experience with somebody else, guiding them through it, having them experience what I experienced, seeing if their playstyle changes from what I've done. I can't do that if I don't have the game still. And what is that experience worth? Your time with somebody else, the possibility of memories in the future with somebody else. This is why I won't trade in my games anymore. I can't. Again, I get it. A kid who doesn't have a job or any other way to get new games outside of waiting for birthdays and Christmases, and sometimes that's not even enough on its own. Sometimes you're relegated to what you have, and that's it. You have to make do with what you got, and that's what I did when I was younger. And there's nothing that I could have done to change how that was. So, again, take it with a grain of salt in that regard. But as an adult, I can't take my games that I own, load them up in a box, and pawn them off somewhere in some store. Because these games are more than just games to me in some regards. They're memories, they're experiences, they're a part of me by proxy. And I can't just up and abandon that.
So there you have it. I mean, again, it's not for all people. I understand that there are some people who enjoy trading in games. You know, the money that they save, they just want to save cash on it. I know Zach and myself have had conversations about it before, briefly on the channel. But just for me, from my own personal benefit, I guess, I will always keep these games. Games that I've only, I don't enjoy even. I will still keep those games because, I mean, again, they're mine. I can do whatever I want with them. I mean, this, eventually, the way that I game, that I keep games, everything like that, unfortunately is going to go away because of the shift towards digital. So there will become a point to where I'm not going to be able to buy a physical disc anymore. It's all going to be a digital pre-order, preload, days beforehand. And if a license runs out or a server goes down for a game, you lose a part of the game, or you just can't play that game anymore. And I understand that is a valid criticism of keeping all of my games, and there will be a point where it's going to be useless. It's going to be worthless. Even something like I mentioned, Elder Scrolls Online. One day, years from now, those servers are going to go down, and that disc is going to do literally nothing. And when that happens, it is going to be worthless. You can literally just throw it in the trash. But again, it's my game. It's on my shelf, a part of my collection. I may not be able to play the game anymore. I may not be able to do anything with the game anymore, but there's still a story associated with it. There's still that story of, well, I tried this MMO, or I played this game, or I have knowledge of something. See, there it is on the shelf. I mean, I also, just a sidebar, I do just love the look of a collection of games, just all the cases. And my collection's not very well organized currently, but I would like to eventually get it organized. But yeah, I mean, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope at least shed a little bit of light on where I approach games from. So when you're listening to the podcast or anything like that, you at least have a general idea of where I come from in some regards to that. It's to some degree plays into the whole me not being a big fan of live service games, but only a small bit. Again, because if the servers go down, that's it. That's game over. Quite literally. But aside from that, I really appreciate your time watching this. Put a lot of effort into this. I actually wrote out like a script and everything, and I learned how to do a lot of various editing for this. So I again appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time. All right. Bye.